I don't even know what week we're on. First week of Eclipse.
Yeah. I was like, it's easy. Week 1.
I don't know. It feels like a while ago that I read it at this point, but so if I don't remember things, my
Yeah. It's been a week. It's been a week.
it has.
hmm Oh, man. You can
What
tell
were
how we feel about that.
Yeah. This week we read chapters 1 through 6 and watched the first 25 minutes of the movie. So, yeah.
True.
Should we just start? I'm so
Right.
used to having Jacob's little segment that it's weird to just jump
I
right in.
know. I know. Now we just jump on in. Yeah, it is interesting. We're on Eclipse, and it's the first time we're going to just jump in and talk about one book.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a
Who knows?
little excited, but also I'm like, I feel like our episodes are going to be shorter than what they have been, which is not a problem, but
We always think that, and somehow they're getting longer. So I don't know.
that's very true.
Okay. Um, yeah. So before chapter 1, we actually addressed this at the end of New Moon, but this book opens with a Robert Frost poem, and we, based on at least my personal theory about the book, will be on the lookout for poetry references and Robert Frost and anything tied to that specific poem,
Yep.
which I feel like I didn't really see in this first
Oh,
section.
they mentioned Robert Frost in the class that Bella and Edward have together. They say they don't talk a lot about it, but the teacher was like reading a Robert Frost poem. So, but
Okay.
yeah,
Whoops.
yeah.
Clearly, I paid attention.
It was literally like they didn't go into any detail because then they just started passing notes back and forth. So,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Uh, okay. Well, the book opens with a scene of Charlie miserably failing at cooking pasta. Um, and it's clear that his attitude towards Edward has not lightened up at all, which leads me to my first question of, do we know how much time has passed between new moon and eclipse?
I'm sure that we do somehow, but I don't know off the top of my head. I wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah. Well, we know she was grounded for the whole time. Um, yeah, she's in school.
Yeah. I
Hard
feel
to
like
say.
not a lot of time has passed. I'm Googling it.
Okay.
Between new moon and eclipse. It's confusing when you do that because then people are talking about phases of the moon. It's like, nope, gotta put twilight in there. It's just says directly after twilight.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, yeah. Don't know exactly, I don't think.
Great. All right. A vague amount of time. I felt like it was like a couple weeks was what I was led to believe
Yeah.
reading it,
That seems
or my.
that's right. Now I'm looking at here's this whole website that has the timeline of literally every single event in Twilight that goes back
Ooh, don't be
thousands of
spoilers.
years. I know, I'm just trying to look because it has the books next to it. So the last definitive date of something was April 7th, which was in New Moon when Jacob confronts Edward and Bella about the treaty. And then the first definitive date that we have here is May 14th, which is when Bella gets accepted into the University of Alaska. So a little over a month.
Okay, that checks with the 2 week philosophy,
Yeah.
or
Internet.
few week. Oh
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man.
I'm struggling. Okay, it's fine. Yeah.
We did
Okay.
kind of skip already some things. because we didn't talk about the preface. It's short, but there is a preface at the beginning that talks about. I honestly didn't take that many notes on it, but it's like less than a page long. Talking about how Bella has ice in her heart, watching him preparing to defend her. Doesn't give any names or anything, and then at the end, a wolf howls somewhere out in the forest. It's vague, and I honestly have no idea what this is talking about because I don't remember Eclipse. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then the first chapter, it does talk about Charlie and stuff, but the first thing in it is a letter from Jacob to Bella that has a bunch of stuff crossed out because he couldn't decide what he wanted to write, and all of the things were, I don't know if they were harsh, but they weren't as nice. And then he crosses all those out and just says, "Yeah, miss you too." So,
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I started reading this at work because when it's slow, I read at work, and then realized I cannot read Twilight, New Moon, any of the books at work because I can't.
yeah,
It's already shady. I'm reading at work, much less I'm going to read and take notes on. Anyways, it's fine.
yeah,
But yeah, so I guess I did read all of this like right after we finished New Moon, which
yeah,
feels like a long time ago.
yeah, it does.
Yeah, I was curious. Why would Jacob give her a note and leave all the mean things he said crossed out? Why not get a new piece of paper?
I had the exact same question, and I was also like, so he's not willing to answer her phone calls, but he can write a note? Like,
Yeah, whatever.
all right, let's try this again for the fifth time. Some technical difficulties. All right, Charlie's cooking. Yes, we're
Charlie's cooking. Um, yeah, I found it particularly terrifying that Bella had to use a steak knife to cut a chunk of pasta.
Oh yeah, I didn't have a note about that, but I had a note that like most of the time I'm Team Charlie, but his inability to take care of himself really irks me. Like, you are a man who's lived by himself for how long? How do you not know how to cook pasta?
Yeah, that's like I just don't get because I'm like, wait, but you've been living on your own for like a decade and a half. Like,
Yeah,
you definitely at least know how to order food. Like, just order something, Charlie.
yeah.
Like,
My next note is about Bella's thought about the word boyfriend
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and how she wants something more than boyfriend, but destiny and fate sounded too hokey when used in casual conversation. But I just found it funny that she wants something more than the term boyfriend and is willing to commit to spending the rest of her life with a vampire, but won't get engaged.
No fiance.
Yeah, yeah. She's
Oh
into her
man.
boundaries, I guess. So good for her,
Oh,
I guess. I don't know.
yeah, sure. My next comment was that they explain who everyone is. It wouldn't have been that fun for Jake to
Yeah.
read.
That's true. I guess they kind of do that in a lot of books. Like, I think Jacob actually talked about it in one of the episodes, talking about how they like sum things up that happened in the previous book, and he was always like, "Oh, who is this for?" And it's like, "Oh, this is who it's for." Like, so.
Apparently, yeah, yeah.
No.
Oh man. Yeah. I okay, my next note is around the line where Bella talks about that she feels anxious being away from Edward in this like gap time between school and then when he's allowed to like come at 7 p.m. Um and I just feel like this is so unhealthy. Like I don't know. In this is the first section. I was not into Bella and Edward, but I also was not into Bella and Jacob. I just was like, everyone is manipulating Bella, and no one is listening to her boundaries. And I don't like any of them. I don't like any of them. It's a
Yeah,
bad story.
I think my problem is I don't like Bella. Like, It's really my problem. Not that I don't like her, I just do not relate to her. And I made some notes of this like later on, and I'm like, I feel like I probably did the first time I read it because I was in eighth grade. So I
Yeah.
related a little more, and now I'm just like, I do not get their decisions she makes and things. And I think you're right about her being it not being healthy, about her not being okay for those couple hours or whatever. But I do appreciate Charlie calling that out kind of, or not that directly, but talking
Yeah.
about hanging out with her other friends and not just seeing the Cullens. So I thought that was
I
good.
also I also have a note about that I think that's a good Charlie move, and then immediately followed by bad Charlie advice,
Yep, yep.
where she's like, I don't think I should hang out with Jacob. Jacob like is romantically interested in me, and Charlie's like, it's fine, just go. Like, no, so bad.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, I can't find my exact notes on that, but I made some note talking about how I know that I am Team Jacob, but like, come on, Charlie, you're like, just let her trust her gut with that. Like, don't make her hang out
Charlie,
with him just because it's convenient for you to hang out with his dad. Like,
yeah, Charlie's being messy. Charlie's being messy.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
Uh, yeah. Mm, so many, yeah, so many thoughts about really this whole section, and a lot of them are around kind of this idea of like Bella standing up for herself. I think it is interesting. I'm really hoping that this is the book we see more of a character arc for Bella. She basically has had no arc
yeah.
in 3 books, really 2, but like essentially she just is like, yeah, she's the same person. Um, and she's just in love now, which is fine. But it's not like, I don't know, it's not that engaging, and she's not the most interesting protagonist, I don't think, for either of us. Um, yeah, so I'm hoping she gets like a little more backbone and starts telling people a little more firmly, which we're starting to see hints of in this section,
Mhm.
which I like.
She needs to start calling out people like the way she calls out Billy. Like, then I'd like
Right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So true.
her.
Um, okay, so then Edward does
We
come.
Before Edward comes, we do
Okay,
learn that Charlie ungrounds her, assuming that she'll hang out with the other friends, and we also learn that she was accepted into the University of Alaska. So,
yeah.
and was there another note that I had that was important before that? Maybe not. Nope, that was it. Okay. And then Edward comes over. Oh, well, they talk a little bit about the killings going on in Seattle, which we learn more about when Edward comes over. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Um, yeah. So Edward comes over, is insisting she continues to apply for colleges. He mentions that he is accepted to all these Ivy League schools and also the University of Alaska. What a time. Uh, and
And Charlie's like, you're gonna go those places? Like, or you're not gonna go to those places? You're gonna go to Alaska instead of Dartmouth or Harvard? Like,
yeah, it's a valid question.
it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've got all that going on. Charlie heads upstairs, is out of earshot, and then Edward reveals that everything going on in Seattle is actually a baby vampire.
I like the term baby instead of they use newborn, but I like baby. It's a baby vampire.
Yeah, he's a little baby vampire.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yep. So yeah, interesting stuff. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, and there is at one point I just have a note about this about Bella talking about like her other friends and their people for her own safety she would never be able to see again after graduation. And I just had questions here. I'm like, So what exactly is the plan to become a vampire and never see anyone she knew again? Like, I genuinely am curious because they don't really explicitly say what it like she's gonna go off to college and they're gonna change her is the plan, but like is she gonna like fake her death? Because all of the other Cullens like were presumed dead. I can't tell if you're laughing at me saying fake your death or if you're just joking. Or both.
I'm just joking because my tea is so much lemon.
I also like that I said just joking, as if that's fine. Oh man,
Oh,
we've
okay.
had a rough start to this podcast today.
I
We've had so many
know.
technical difficulties, and oh man,
My tea's too lemony.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Struggles.
Restart computers and get less lemon tea. Oh man.
Okay.
So what I was asking about was what the plan was with Bella to turn her, and I'm curious if they were planning on faking her death. Oh no, are you okay again? Are you laughing at me this time instead of joking? Okay.
This is such a ridiculous.
But no, think about it. All the other Cullens were presumed dead when they got turned. So like, are they gonna
Yeah,
presume that she's dead too? You know? And it was a genuine question.
no, I'm laughing at the ridiculousness of today's recording
Okay,
session.
okay. I
I
was
just
like, I feel like this is not that funny. I feel
no,
like it's a reasonable question.
not that funny. It's
Okay.
not that funny. I'm just having a breakdown in a
Yeah,
cute way.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I also okay. I mean, I also just have questions around like Bella literally doesn't think she's gonna see any of these people for like so long,
Yeah.
and that's just not how it like. Obviously, we know it's not how it actually plays out, but also I don't know. Like,
And she also makes a point to say something about Alaska was perfect because like it being like overcast or not having a lot of sun, and that was Edward's requirement, and then her requirement was for it to be far away. And I'm like, is she just wanting to be far from her parents, or is there like I didn't quite follow why she wanted it to be far away. I don't know.
yeah, I think we're like my interpretation was she thinks she's gonna be a danger to her parents, and so she wants like an excuse for why she won't have to see them very often,
Yeah, that makes
which
sense.
is like somewhat fair. But again, I mean, I don't know. I guess none of the Cullens are like new vampires. We don't see them for a long time, you know. But I don't know. I don't know. I just don't feel like it's going to be like decades before she can see people. Does
Yeah,
not seem to be the vibe, but that's kind of how she's acting, you know?
yeah, and that's why I'm wondering if they're planning on faking her death, like
Yeah.
which I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we get particular answers to that. Or, yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. No, it's a reasonable question.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, okay.
But then there's the stuff about the newborn vampire that's in Seattle.
Yes.
And I'm also like wondering about Victoria and this whole thing, which I don't remember much about the newborns. I don't remember like I feel like they end up preparing for a battle with the newborns, and I'm like, does that battle happen? I don't remember. Or yeah, I don't know how Victoria is involved or if she is involved and what happens with Victoria. I have no memory from here on out. So,
I like remember a scene because this is the first, I think, I think this is the first movie where we see more like obvious vampire fight and like burning vampires. Like
yeah.
I remember that from the movie,
Yeah.
but I don't totally remember. And I remember there are newborn. Well, there's like the like child vampires in this one, right? And then it like comes up again because we've already talked about like Bree Tanner.
I know.
Anyways, I don't,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if there's a bunch of children vampires, but I think Bree Tanner's a child.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
But I don't know if they're all children.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, moving
Okay, so
right.
neither of us remember.
Yeah, thanks
We
for
both
listening.
remember details, but
Yeah. Um, yeah. The chapter ends with Bella talking to Edward about what Charlie has said about how she needs to see her friends. And Edward's like, yeah, for sure. And she's like, and like Jacob's struggling. And he's like, too bad, suck it. He's the worst. Yeah, basically. And Bella's like, well, I'm gonna go, like, I am gonna go see him. And he's like, no, I will stop you.
yeah.
Not cute, Edward. Not cute.
Not so much. I specifically made a note because Edward refers to Jacob as a dog, and she says how she flinched and was used to Jacob's derogatory slurs, bloodsucker, leech, parasite, but it sounded harsher in Edward's velvet voice, which I just thought that was funny because I'm like, dog is like so not harsh compared to all those words that Jacob uses for him. He
No.
gets upset about dog, which, but yeah, Edward not letting her go is not the best look for him.
It's not. It's not a cute look.
Yeah.
Uh, then we go to chapter 2. Uh, we see kind of the relationship dynamics with Bella's friend group. And she kind of explains who is still friends with her. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me?
That lemon really got you.
Apparently. She explains, yeah, which friends still talk to her and were able to kind of like forgive her and like accept that she was going through a hard time. Even like it, I don't know if she actually says forgive her, but like that's kind of how it's worded. And I just think, again, this is an early 2000s book, but like if your friend's going through a mental health crisis, they don't need to be forgiven. I mean, you can like address if you're like personally hurt and work through that. It's not to say like someone's in crisis, so your feelings aren't valid, but also like she didn't intentionally do something wrong, you
Yeah.
know? And there's, yeah, it's just very early 2000s slash everything before now.
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Anyways,
In other
uh,
words, Jessica is still the worst.
she's still the worst. She's
Yeah.
still the worst.
But
Um,
apparently we're supposed to hate Lauren the most. So
That's nonsense. I don't know what Stephenie Meyer's problem is with her character Lauren, but it's unhinged,
yeah.
frankly.
Yeah, it is a bit.
uh yeah, I could only think about that weird backstory of Lauren's short haircut when they were talking about her in this chapter.
Hmm.
So weird. Um, we do find out that Angela and Ben and Mike, not Mike,
Yeah,
all
Mike.
sit with Alice and Edward.
Yeah, I don't know if Mike does or not actually, but Mike is one of the people that is still like talking to her and friends with her. So
Yeah, yeah. And we for sure know Angela and Ben sit with them at lunch, which leads us to they're all sitting at lunch, all being Edward, Alice, Bella, Ben, Angela. And Alice has a vision. It is clearly, it seems to be like a theme because Alice is having visions seemingly like all the time, kind of, but specifically when she has ones that are like somebody she really cares about is in danger, is when you, like the writing really emphasizes that she like goes blank, you know?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so we know it's like something bad, and Edward plays it off because Angela and Ben are there and seemingly starts trying to avoid Bella to not talk about it.
Yeah, very clearly does because Edward strikes up a conversation with Mike Newton after they leave the cafeteria, just so that him and Bella don't have to talk one-on-one. I'm like, okay, that's a dead giveaway. He's hiding something. Dead giveaway.
He offers to fix Mike Newton's car. It's so funny.
And then I really like that Alice calls him out and is like, "You're not the best mechanic. Maybe Rosalie." Which I
And then like, yeah, laugh at the idea of Rosalie showing up to Mike Newton's house to fix his car.
yeah. Yeah.
So funny.
Which also, like, I don't know. We've obviously talked about cars on this podcast because Stephenie Meyer has a weird thing about talking about cars. And I do find it funny that she apparently knows nothing about cars and had to get the advice from her brother. But so many of her characters are so into cars. Like, I don't know. It's weird detail.
Yeah, maybe like she just thinks people who are cool are into cars, and so she's trying to make all these characters cool. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. And I think like high schoolers care about like a car some, like, but it's more like getting a car to drive more than like specifics. But granted, I hung out with the theater and debate kids, so they were not into cars. Shocker. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay, Bella does confront Edward about the vision finally, and Edward tells her that it is about Jasper.
Mm-hmm.
And that Jasper making some sudden decision, and that's why Alice was freaked out, but he didn't even think Bella noticed it, so he didn't bring it up. Bella buys this. The reader does not.
No.
This reader does not. Okay, I have a note at this place because already we've seen Edward not really respecting what Bella is saying she wants and not trusting her. And I just thought this was so interesting as a juxtaposition to, I've been reading the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, and I am on the Well of Ascension, and I won't tell you what characters because I don't want it to be a spoiler for people, but there is a section where a character is giving relationship advice, and one of the things they talk about is that love is trusting in what the other person wants, and like is like basically I'm summarizing the quote, but essentially it's about like trusting and respecting that what the other person is saying and what they want, and that always trying to like decide that you know better or you're trying to make them safer because they're misguided is not love, and it's not loving them, and it's not like a healthy relationship. And this ends up becoming like a decent like big plot point for some things that happen later. And I just could not stop thinking about that.
Yeah.
In this section, because literally every character is just here. Bella is directly saying what she wants. And all these people, particularly Edward and Jacob, are just ignoring her and saying, we know better, like whatever. And Bella is also doing this, but almost in like defiance because she's sick of being told what to do, which I feel more okay with. Yeah. Anyways, I just couldn't stop thinking about that because it's obviously so different than the relationship in this book.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, it is Edward and Jacob doing it, but it is literally everybody, because this is where I had the note about Charlie, because Charlie pushes again about the thing with Jacob. And I literally said in my quote, I said, Charlie needs to back the fuck off. Like, if she doesn't want to be friends with him because he keeps pushing for something more than friendship, that's super, super valid. Like,
yeah, can you imagine that like a guy is super into your teenage daughter and she's like, well, he wants a romantic relationship and I don't feel the same way, so I think like I'm gonna distance myself, and you're like, but he's depressed, you owe him. Like, toxic, gross.
Yeah, I
Not
I have
good.
a problem with that. Even though I'm both Team Charlie and Team Jacob, I have a problem with it.
They don't chime well in this section, but we'll hold out hope for improvement.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, uh, um, yeah. Do you have any more notes before Bella kind of decides she's going to go see Jacob?
Well, we just learn I don't have any like specific notes, but I have notes about like what happens because
Yeah.
we do
Yeah.
have where it's talked about them going to Florida to visit
Oh,
Renee.
yeah. Yeah.
So that
Mhm.
happens. Where Edward talks about that his parents gave her those plane tickets back for her birthday and still haven't been used and that they're expiring soon. And this is also another great example of Edward way overstepping because he is just like Bella is hesitant about actually going, like, because he wants to go this weekend. And she's like, I don't think so. And then Edward just kind of interjects and like tells Charlie that that's happening. And I'm like, all right then. Like, that's over
Right?
there, but okay.
Is that in this chapter? Why don't I have any notes on this? Hmm.
Because you were
Whoopsie.
doing it at work.
Apparently, I was not bar I work at, just to be clear.
Your other work. Yeah, not that
The
work.
other, the other work I do.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
Just
tried
kidding.
to take better notes on what happens in the chapters this time because I keep getting myself confused. So,
Mm, yeah, yeah.
oh, and we also
Uh,
have in this chapter that we didn't talk about was Edward noticing the car stereo in Bella's room, which I thought was kind of significant, but also not.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I do think it's significant. One, that he's just realizing this does not make sense because how many times has he been in her truck? Like we said, it's a hole in the front of the dash.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he
Also, the
definitely,
fact that he's like kind of like, oh, why would you do that? And it's like you literally took all the other memories of you and got rid of them, and but you're questioning, oh, why would you take the stereo out of your truck? Like, I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Right. And then like kind of making her feel guilty that and she's like, "Well, you don't have to replace it. Like I don't need a nice stereo." And he's like, "It's not for you that we're replacing it."
Yeah.
Mm-mm. It's not a good moment for Edward. I do think this about like telling Charlie is again like another really big thing. Obviously, it's not cool. He's going over her head with that. But he also is like forcing himself into a situation to go spend a long weekend with her mom. And she's a very complicated relationship with her mom. Like, this is just not cool on any level, any level. And we find out the whole thing is a manipulation just to get her out of Forks. So it's just,
I also have
I,
questions logistically about a vampire going to Florida, and they try to cover it by saying, oh, he was working on term papers, so he was hanging out inside. And I'm like, I feel like Renee's the kind of person who would be like, "Oh, come with us. You're in Florida. You need to go outside." Like she would be that
yeah,
person. But that's a whole
yeah,
other. There's
yeah.
there's a lot with the whole Florida trip that
Yeah,
is
we just
questionable.
brush over it. It's really brushed over. Yeah.
Yeah, and we actually don't actually even see the trip to Florida. We just hear about it after the fact. But
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, but before that, um,
yeah, Bella trying to go to Jacob's, I think, was what you brought up.
sorry, I've just found the notes. So, yeah, so then Edward leaves because it's the end of the curfew. And in the gap between when Edward is going to sneak back into the house, she decides she's going to go to La Push. She's going to go see Jacob. Um, and she forgets that Alice is a thing.
I mean, Alice has missed stuff with her before. It's possible. Unlikely, but possible.
Yeah. But literally, she like basically forgets. She's like, I'm just going to go and I'll be back before Edward is back. And then she goes out to her car, and Edward is sitting in the car and is like, obviously, Alice told me. And she's like, Alice, ah, how
Dang
did I
it.
forget?
Yeah.
It's so funny to me.
Also, I would be so pissed off if I was Bella. Yeah. I don't know.
Yes, because then Edward sabotages her car so it won't run.
Yeah,
So that
that too is an extreme reaction. Like,
extreme, extreme. It's not cute, Edward. Ugh. Title of this episode, maybe. It's not cute, Edward.
yeah.
Ugh,
And
man.
then it does talk a little bit about the werewolves and what powers work on them and not, because obviously we know Alice can't see them in her visions, but Edward can read their minds. He specifically says the blacks at least, which I that makes me curious. I want to pay attention to see if he can read the other werewolves' minds or if it's something with
Yeah,
Jake specifically. I don't know. I'm curious about that. But it's Carlisle theorizes that it's because it's what does it say? Their lives are so ruled by their transformations. It's more of an involuntary reaction than a decision, and that it's unpredictable and changes everything about them. So when they shift from one to the other, they don't really even exist. The future can't hold them. So that's what it says about that in the visions. But
yeah.
I
How do
also,
you, how do you feel about that explanation?
I don't know. I'm curious if that was actually a legitimate explanation of what's going on or just a theory that they throw out there because I genuinely don't remember. And then I had questions about potentially Edward be able to read his mind because of spoilers. Probably don't listen if you haven't read the books. Um, about the connection to Renesmee, if that somehow factors in or something. But I don't think that's likely, but that was just something that I
Yeah.
made a random note of while reading that. So I don't
Yeah.
know. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I feel like it doesn't make as much sense, or it feels like it really dehumanizes the werewolves and is almost like they're not human, they're not themselves when they're werewolves.
Mm,
Um, which could be interesting if it's the idea that then Alice has to pick up on a whole other set of like frequencies or whatever she calls it to like find the thoughts, like if there's other or to find the like the future, Do you know what
yeah.
I'm talking about? Is that
Yeah,
making
I think
sense?
so. Yeah.
Um, that would be kind of intriguing. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. I think it's like a fine theory, I guess, for them, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
because they
hoping to get
still,
more definitive answers, but I'm not
yeah,
sure if we will.
yeah.
I did have we got an email this week from Dallas um that is it's more about well it is about new moon. Yeah, that makes sense because our last one was about new moon. And it talks about that we do get an explanation in Breaking Dawn about which powers work or don't work on Bella. So I'm
Mhm.
curious to see if we get more about the werewolves and I'm curious about like the other people's powers, if the other Cullens, if it works on them or not. And I had like this question about Jasper's power. He has like mood control, and the werewolves change like because of their mood. And I'm like, could he somehow affect that? I don't think that happens. I don't remember that happening, but I feel like there should be something about that. I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, like he could enrage them and they could like become wolves.
Yeah, or he could calm them down so that they couldn't change, you know?
Oh yeah, also that.
So I'm curious about that. But
Yeah, interesting. Because we know Jasper's power work on them. We talk about that
yeah, yeah,
later in this section.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Chapter 3.
Yeah. Where they're coming
Great.
back from Florida.
Back from Florida. Um, yeah, we do not hear about the Florida trip while it's happening. We just kind of hear Bella's thoughts on the plane ride home. And she specifically talks about she's relieved to be home because her mom is too perceptive. And it's like easier to kind of like brush things off with Charlie, which I think is really interesting. Um, yeah, and just like hearing more about those dynamics and Edward's observations of Renee. Also, yeah, there's some interesting stuff. Tell me some of your thoughts, Amy?
Yeah, I had some thoughts kind of generally in this section as a whole, and we kind of skimmed over them in the previous chapter and didn't talk about them, but about Bella's parents. And I'm like, she just doesn't have the best parents because we get a note here in this chapter about how she's wondering if her mom is going to try to give her a lecture on responsibility to specifically like a sex talk, which we learned earlier in a previous chapter that
Mm,
Charlie was trying to have that conversation and she was like, "Yeah, mom beat you to that like 10 years ago," which I'm also like, that means she was 8 years old. That seems a little young, but I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
But then she talks about how it wasn't embarrassing, like with her mom, to have that conversation like it was with Charlie. And it says, after all, I had been the one giving her that lecture time and time again in the last 10 years. And I'm just like, that's horrifying. Like, I just, yeah, I'm like, she has some messed up relationships with her mom and dad, were kind of my thoughts. But
yeah. Yes, she does. Yes, she does. Mm,
But yeah, her mom being perceptive clearly is accurate, which I also had like some questions. I'm like, it's kind of crazy that nobody else has like picked up on about how intense it is, but I guess Charlie has and just doesn't know what to do about it somewhat. And
yeah,
like obviously the Cullens are like happy about the relationship and understand the reasoning behind the intensity of it, and the rest of them are teenagers in high school. So I guess it makes sense. But
yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I think that makes sense that her mom's like the person to be like concerned about that. Her mom is also the person who Bella's baggage around not getting married. She seems more concerned about her mom's opinion about this than her dad's. Like, she doesn't think either of them would be happy if she got married really young, but she's like more concerned about her mom's thoughts, which is interesting.
I'm not surprised by that though, just because she like has spent most of her time with her mom, and it seems like her mom has a lot of relationship missteps, to say the least, and is probably like concerned about Bella doing the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Hmm. Hmm. When they get home, uh, Charlie lets Bella know that Jacob has been calling kind of obsessively throughout the weekend, and then Charlie is interrupted by a phone call from Jacob, which is very brief.
Yeah.
um, and he basically asks her if she's going to be at school tomorrow, and then says he misses hearing her voice, but he has to go, and like hangs up, which confuses Bella and leads her to the theory that he is calling to confirm if Edward has turned her over the 3-day weekend.
Yeah. I totally bought this theory. I thought that that is exactly what he was doing. I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. We learn the next chapter it's not, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
oh.
Yeah. I also thought that that made sense 100%.
I
So, yeah.
initially thought before we got to the phone call with him and when it was just Charlie talking about Jacob calling, that it was something to do with seeing either Victoria or the newborn vampire is what I thought, but
Mm-hmm.
wasn't those
Yeah.
either. So
Yeah. What a time. I mean, it was tangentially
yeah,
about Victoria
yeah.
ish, you know. Yeah. Okay. So they get to school, and who is there but Jacob Black, causing quite the stir. Uh, Basically because he's big,
And has a
and he
motorcycle,
doesn't
like I
go
think
there,
on the
you know.
sidewalk
But
or something. But yeah. He's 6'7" now,
yeah,
by the way, too.
yeah,
So
that is big.
yeah.
Yeah, Edward tries to convince Bella to stay in the car. She is not having it. So they go ahead and talk to Jacob together.
Yep.
It doesn't go well.
Nope.
Oh man. Yeah, it becomes clear in this conversation with Jacob that Edward is not telling Bella everything that's going on. And we find out that Paul and Emmett had some kind of altercation. Bella is really concerned. Jacob is being pretty like snide and rude, honestly. Like he's just being antagonistic.
Yeah.
Uh yeah. Yeah. Um, then Jacob reveals that Victoria was back, and that's around part of the altercation. Bella goes into, she basically starts having a panic attack, not fully, but she's like out of her body and is very anxious. And Edward is like, this is why I don't tell her. And Jacob says the line, it's better that she would be frightened than lied to, which I am kind of like, yeah, like
Hmm.
I agree with that. I don't know if you do, but
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with it, and I feel like in this situation that like Edward's really just like treating her like a child and not keeping her informed on stuff, and like I get wanting to protect her, but not telling her anything is a whole nother level that I'm not okay with. So, yeah.
yeah. And in fact, it does not protect her because what if she decided to go somewhere after work, or like she just might make choices that seem like no big deal, you know? Um, yeah. So, anyways, yeah. Then we get a very interesting moment that Jacob starts remembering how broken Bella was after Edward left. We don't overtly find out this is what's happening, but I knew this is what was happening. Did you
Yeah.
also?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
Um, yeah, and Edward, Bella described, Edward is really like in a lot of like emotional pain. In fact, Bella says it's like the look on his face is like when Jane was torturing him.
Hmm.
Um, he's really freaked out, like what Jacob is doing. But yeah, like Edward is like physically in kind of extreme emotional pain, realizing and seeing those visions and memories of how bad Bella was when he left.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah, not
Jacob,
Jacob's best moment here either. They're both
no,
not having great moments. So,
no, and Jacob responds by thinking this is funny,
yeah.
also, which is not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it honestly, it feels kind of shocking to me that Jacob often just like assumes Edward is bad mouthing him. That part is not as surprising, but assumes Edward is not trying to like take care of or isn't really concerned about Bella when like he's literally in an extreme pain response by seeing how much he hurt her. Like,
I
but you're
think I
shocked.
also kind of understand why Jacob assumes that just because he saw like how bad Bella got and it was a direct result of Edward leaving. But like, I'm not saying that Jacob is any of his actions in this situation are valid at all whatsoever. But like, I could see where he could think that Edward doesn't have Bella's best interests at heart, but he's wrong. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So I guess I do see your point. Like, it is hard to be excited when your friend gets back with their ex if you became their friend after the breakup. Like, if you're the person who walked through the breakup and you didn't see any of the times they were happy with that person before, like, that is hard. That is valid.
yeah. And also the whole like mortal enemy thing is probably plays a little
Yeah.
bit into it too, but minor detail.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Um,
And the
yeah.
principal comes and is like, get out. Unless there's something that happens before that that I'm forgetting about.
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then
Mm-hmm.
Bella. and Edward go off to class because Bella kind of makes a point to say that they had to go to class because I think it's the principal was right behind them, so they didn't have other options to like go talk about stuff or whatever. And then we just get the one line saying that Mr. Birdie was reciting a Frost poem. That's all we get about Robert Frost. So you really didn't miss much with that. But Edward and Bella are in class and are passing notes. And I have a note here about that I would be really pissed off if I were Bella because she learns that all of the Cullens knew about what had happened and were not telling her anything. So, and they all knew that Alice was back and were all involved in this incident that happened with the werewolves, and nobody told her. So, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like her main friend group. Like they're some of her only friends that really know what's happening in her life. So like it is like that's so hurtful.
Yeah. Yeah. So then it goes to everybody betting on who they would take sides between Jacob and Edward, which I found it funny to learn that Mike is Team Jacob, which is not surprising, but
But like he
he
kind of
just
has had more overt negative reactions with Jacob.
yeah, that's true. I feel like he just has to deal with Edward every day, but
Yeah. Uh-huh. He just wants Edward to get beat up. That's the
yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
No.
I kind of forgot about the movie theater thing. Now I'm like, maybe it doesn't make sense that he's Team Jacob, but
Uh,
you know.
whatever. So funny.
Chapter 4?
Chapter 4.
Yeah.
Chapter 4.
Bella thinks she should be turned into a vampire earlier than planned, and everybody's like, nah, I don't think so. But Carlisle really is like, there's 7 of us, and Alice is on her side, so we'll know when Victoria's coming, which I do feel like is a bit of a flawed plan because of the whole werewolf thing, but you know,
And because she's almost killed her so many times already. Like,
that valid.
oh man. Um, yeah, my first note on the chapter that I laughed out loud is when Bella is kind of talking about the danger with Victoria and talks about Edward like taking some rash action, being very nervous. And Alice says, haven't you noticed that Edward really overreacts? Which I just think so true. So funny.
Very, very true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My next note is about Bella talking about how she would have never admit to Edward how hard it was when he was gone and how it brought back the abandonment nightmares. And I'm just like, this girl has literal PTSD
Mm-hmm.
and not holding this man accountable for anything. I just,
No.
oh,
No, that is also my next note. Yeah, it's insane. And yeah, I also have literal PTSD.
that's so funny. I have those exact words too.
Yeah, like I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm feeling sad. Like all the relationships are bad. Remember when I loved these books? We're ruining it.
Yeah. It did also say in Dallas's email that she thinks we'll both like Breaking Dawn the most, specifically for me, Jacob's point of view, which I'm like, yeah, that's probably accurate, but we'll see. But
Yeah, yeah. And we
it'll
already
get
talked.
better.
Yeah, we have some hints coming up that maybe Bella is going to have a turn and start to be a little bit of a stronger character. But right now, I'm depressed on her behalf.
Yeah, yeah. It's not great right now.
No.
Not as bad as a new moon though.
Right. True. True. But also, yeah, it's just different. Anyways, my next note is Bella goes to La Push. She is able to, she basically goes into work. They don't need her. And she makes an instant decision so that Alice won't catch on. And guns it to basically the treaty line with hope that after she crosses, then Alice won't come for her.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. That's the big thing that happens in this one.
Yep. I have a note. What's my next note? When she's talking to Jacob, he gives like the story of what happened with Sam, and she gives the story of what happened in Italy, and he asks about like, oh, you forgave him for all of that, and she says there was nothing to forgive. And once again, I'm just like, Bella, yes, there was. Come on, like,
Yeah,
yeah, I had a lot of feelings about this chapter with what Bella was saying not matching up with how she was feeling like 5 minutes ago, but
right. It's also 1,000,000% fine that she chose to forgive him and that she's still in love with him. It
yeah.
just to be like there's nothing to forgive
Yeah.
also like undermines everything that happened in the last book.
Exactly. Exactly. I like obviously we know I'm Team Jacob, but I'm okay with her being with Edward. It's just the fact she doesn't acknowledge there was ever any issue of any kind that I have a problem with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bella is gaslighting herself.
She really is. And then I also have a question here about the whole treaty thing, and I'm like, why not just make an amendment to the treaty about Victoria and like I don't know. I feel like there's some solution they could come to here, but
Yeah, yeah, you would think.
yeah,
Or,
but
or even to be like, okay, we're both going to give up some and have a bigger neutral territory so that we can work together.
yeah, yeah,
Because she's like on the line so that neither of them can grab her.
yeah. But I guess it's that whole mortal enemies hatred for each other that they can't really help that
Yeah,
kind of preventing that from happening. But
yeah, yeah. Oh man. Um yeah, one thing before Jacob goes into telling this whole story, Jacob says something. Why don't I have that written down?
he
Um,
says something.
something. But she feels like he's saying welcome home, which I think is big. Like emotionally, she like it's so meaningful for her to be there. Um, yeah. Okay, and then I'm gonna jump ahead to now Jacob has told the story.
Okay.
uh it really annoys me that while Bella is explaining what happened in Italy, that Jacob does not care to learn their names.
Yeah.
There is literally like 6 of them, 7 of them. It's not that hard.
No. And they're
Like
all very different from one another versus Jacob and like the pack are more similar. Like it's not that hard to learn their names. And he knows some of their names. Come on. Like
yeah, yeah, and yeah. I just think also like again, like why can't he get that like these are people in Bella's life, even if it's just to trash talk them, at least know the right name. Like, I
yeah.
don't know. Like, yeah, whatever. Um, yeah, and Bella kind of lets Jacob have it then in this section. Like, this is again one of the first times she really pushes back and she's like, no, no, like you can't keep talking like this. This is insane. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We also, is it? No, it's the next chapter. Never mind. I thought I had a couple things to say, but they're all in the next chapter. So,
Yeah. Well, let's jump in. Chapter
all right.
5.
All
Chapter
right.
this was a slightly shorter chapter, I
Yeah, a
believe.
little bit.
Um, yeah, and it continues. Bella and Jacob are still talking, and the first big piece of lore that we get is that Jacob is not aging as long as he is transforming into a werewolf. He can't age, but he will start aging again when he stops transforming
Mhm.
into a werewolf.
Which I completely forgot that was a thing at all. So,
Yeah, Yeah. It kind of makes sense though. Like otherwise there would be older werewolves and I don't know. It
Yeah,
just makes sense.
it does. I
Um
also have a
yeah.
note at the beginning of the chapter where Jacob and Bella are talking about Edward and how like Edward and Jacob are just ready to like kill each other and how it drives her crazy. And he asks if Edward is like ready to kill him, and she says, "Not like you seem to be. At least he can be grown up about it and knows that hurting you would hurt me." And I'm like, that is an extremely valid point, and one reason that I would be Team Edward, because like that is a very basic thing to do. Also, now Jacob apparently is like age 25, according to the whole werewolf thing, and I'm like, you're older than Edward now. You'd think you would be more mature, but nope, not the case.
No. Nope, no. I'm also I like get he said that, but I feel like it's not true. Like I feel like he's just saying it to like get like in hopes that Bella will be into him. Like I don't
Wait,
know.
he's saying what?
That he's 25.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. I thought you were talking about something else. I was like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's very possible that he's just saying it for that reason, because of their whole age debate.
Yeah, yeah. Because of the age debate is why I
Yeah,
feel that way. Because he's
yeah,
been joking about it for however long now, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, what a
We
time. Generally in this section, Jacob is just kind of an asshole. Like he's not respecting how Bella feels at all. He's not like yeah, he's just not getting it. He's not getting it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate with Jacob and Bella's relationship so far, at least. I don't remember what happens the rest of the time, but one of them is always being an asshole to the other one. So that's a little unfortunate. But
Yeah, it is. Mm.
yeah. We also learn in this section more about Sam and Emily's relationship, and then Leah also being Sam's high school sweetheart, which I also totally forgot about. And I completely forgot that Emily and Leah were cousins, like second cousins, I think it said. But
Yeah.
forgot all that stuff. So,
Second
which,
cousin who acted like sisters. Oh, like us, cute. But
yeah,
not, that's the end of it.
yeah, not the whole high school sweethearts stealing each other's true loves and all that crap, turning into werewolves, you know.
No, no fated mates.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
imprinting. That's the word they use, imprinting.
yeah. I was
Yeah.
gonna say something, I don't remember what it was now. Oh, do we know if Leah has changed yet? I don't think we do.
I don't
Okay.
think so. No, they haven't talked about it at all.
Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like if we knew, it would have been addressed more overtly in this section
Yeah.
because they're talking about her, you know?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we also learn more about the werewolves that were there previously, and that it says Mr. Atera, Billy, and Harry had actually seen their grandfathers make the change. So that makes a lot of sense as to why Billy was so freaked out about the Cullens. So
Mm,
that
yeah.
checks out. I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about the fact that he would actually be alive for it. I thought like that he would have heard the stories, but not actually been there necessarily. So
Yeah. You're saying like he would have been a kid and seen the Cullens when they were here the last time?
yeah, it says in there, it says Mr. Taro, Billy, and Harry had actually seen their grandfathers make the change. So they had
Oh, yeah.
seen them become werewolves.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I didn't jump to the leap that that also means they had seen Edward, like Carlisle, Esme, like all of them. They would have seen them as kids. But probably, I
Yeah,
mean, that
yeah.
makes sense.
I wasn't saying that either, but yeah, I was just thinking of that
Mm,
Billy would be more aware of like that happening and would actually experience some of it firsthand with his grandfather. But yeah, they
yeah.
probably did see the
Right.
Cullens. Yeah.
And that would make even more sense. Like if you knew someone as like a little kid and then all of a sudden you're like an older guy and they like come back and look the exact same, including their like teenage kids, like, yeah, that
Yeah.
would freak you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like justifies it maybe more.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. One of the funniest lines in the book happens towards the end of chapter 5. Do you know what I am referring to?
Um, I have two that I wrote LOL about. I which I don't think it's this one, but I thought it was funny when Bella said, "Sorry, age is just a touchy subject for me." I don't think that's probably what you're talking about, but is it this other one? I decided I was just glad he didn't claim there was some mystical wolfy connection between the two of us. I thought that was funny, but
That's funny too, but no.
oh, okay. I don't know then.
I have it's like she's arguing with Jacob, I think. Yeah, I should just take notes on my Kindle now that we're just doing one book because you
Yeah.
actually have all the things you're referencing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But no, so she's like having an argument and she's like, "You're a werewolf, Edward's a vampire, and I'm a Virgo."
Oh yeah, that is funny. I just didn't highlight that. But yeah, that is funny.
So funny. So funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that.
Yep.
I also thought I can't remember but it might have been in the previous chapter too about Jacob talking about how he's human. I'm like, you're a werewolf. I'm like, you
Yeah.
act like you're just a regular human person, you know? I think that was the previous chapter though. But,
Yeah, I think it is too. I think that's part of me talking about just him being like, yeah, so obnoxious, you know. Um yeah. Yeah, it's just to me, maybe that's the beginning of this chapter and then him talking about not aging, although that would be counter to his point that he's human. So, probably not. But yeah, no, I'm 100% like, no, Bella is justified to push back on that. You are obviously a werewolf.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. I also think it's interesting, like, Jacob talks about, like, in that argument, like, well, it's different because, like, he didn't choose that. And Bella, like, yells at him, like, Edward didn't choose this either. And that, like, same idea, you know? Yeah, again, just the, like, gaps for Jacob where, like, he can believe these things about himself or his pact that are actually kind of similar to the Cullens, but he, like, can't believe it about the Cullens.
Yeah.
Again, mortal enemies thing, but
Okay, I'm also just thinking about this now, and I'm sure we already had the answers, but my memory has not held on to it. So when when the Cullens first came and they had this treaty, the purpose of the treaty was so that they didn't bite anybody, but they weren't biting anybody, right? Because they were the vegetarians. Like, so all of their fear is just because they're vampires, but they haven't actually seen them bite anybody, you know? It all
yeah,
seems a little silly. Like,
yeah. I think it's like I feel like they talked about some the idea that like vampires and werewolves have never coexisted before, like they've never been able to, and instead of like having this all out like battle where one of them would be like killed or
yeah,
like forced to leave, they make
sure.
this treaty to have mutual agreements and are like, we can actually live
Yeah.
in peace and we'll make these rules so that everyone feels like more comfortable.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that does, because it's like otherwise they would have just killed them if they hadn't been like vegetarians or whatever. So that that makes sense. But I was just
Mm-hmm.
thinking because I'm like they actually have like a fair amount in common. I feel like they should just get along with each other, which I realize is not realistic, but you know,
It's all we want in such divisive times as these. We're like, can't you guys just see what you have in common?
and everybody just get along. Ugh.
Oh man. Okay, anything else you want to chat about in chapter 5?
Uh, I'm just looking at my notes. We do learn more about Sam's backstory and about how the reason he had such like a hard time was because he was in love with Leah. I keep messing up Leah and Emily's name, so I want to make sure that I get it right. He was in love with Leah, and
Yeah.
him changing made him imprint on Emily, so he like broke his promises that he made to Leah, which makes a lot of sense. So I
Yeah.
just had a note about that saying that's really sad,
Uh, it
but
is.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm,
But other than that, I don't have a lot of notes other than that line that I talked about Bella saying that she was glad there wasn't some mystical wolfy connection between the two of them because Jacob says that he hasn't imprinted on anybody. So,
right. Yep. Yep. Mm. All right. Chapter 6,
yeah.
titled Switzerland.
They keep titling things after places, and I'm like, do I forget places that they go? And it's like, no. He's just talking about being neutral, like Switzerland.
Yeah. Forks is Switzerland.
Yes. Yes. In this
Uh,
chapter, she goes to Angela's house, and on the way to Angela's house, a Volvo appears behind her, and Edward is mad at her, and she just ignores him and drives to Angela's and has a relatively normal time at Angela's, which is kind of nice for a change.
uh-huh. The other notable thing I think is this is another sign of Bella having a little more like independence. Yeah, I think she just doesn't want to deal with it and avoid it. And she wants to avoid it. But I feel like in every other situation, she's been like desperate to talk to Edward and spend any time with him and all this stuff. And she literally is like, I'm just going to pretend I don't know he's driving behind me and
Yeah,
just go to Angela's. And I'm not even going to look at his car when he like drives by.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
This is
Mm-hmm.
where Charlie gave good advice to hang out with her other friends, and she's listening to it, which is good.
Yes. Um, yeah. And she's helping Angela, which is just also like very sweet. We get some cute interactions between Angela and Ben. I just find them even cuter together, knowing in like from Midnight Sun that Edward set them up.
Yeah, yeah,
It makes it like extra cute. It worked out.
yeah.
Uh,
It's a
yeah.
fun detail to have.
Hmm. Yeah. She also like opens up to Angela a little bit, being like vague about some of the situation between Edward and Jacob and the conflict. And Angela is like, yeah, I don't think it's about any of that stuff you just said. I'm pretty sure they're jealous. Like,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
um, yeah, which Bella does address with Edward a little bit further on in the chapter.
yeah. I'm realizing I actually don't have any notes at all with Angela and Bella's interaction, and my first one isn't until she starts talking to Edward, but I
That's
did
fine.
like the part with Angela, but
Yeah, I finished mine, so we can jump ahead.
yeah, yeah.
She finished helping Angela, goes home. His dinner with Charlie goes up to her room, and lo and behold, who is there? Our favorite culprit of breaking and entering, Edward Cullen.
Yep. And that's where she talks about being Switzerland with the whole enemies nonsense, as she calls it. And I found it really funny that she was saying that Jacob's like her best friend and Edward's the love of her life. Well, not the love of her life, the love of her existence because she's alive. And then if Angela turns out to be a witch, she can join the party too. I thought that was so funny.
I did too. I like laughed out loud. I thought it was so funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Um yeah, Edward in this section he doesn't overtly say, but he does kind of admit, like subtly, passively, that he does feel like some jealousy. Uh yeah, and also again makes fun of her for smelling like a dog.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
is time? Then Edward, also an important thing to note is when Alice realized that Bella went to La Push, we find out that in this section, Edward immediately left hunting
Mhm.
and came back. So we also know his eyes are super black. He's got all the purple rings around them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, do you have anything else about what they say or what they talk about?
No, not until we get to Alice being introduced is my next note. So
Yes. So, because of this, Edward still needs to go hunting, but he is quite concerned every time he's going hunting that he is going to, or that Bella is going to go back to La Push, which
Mhm.
he is not cool with, despite it being fine this time. So, Bella wakes up in the morning, and who is there but our dearest friend Alice? Uh, Not Alice's finest moment as a friend, but I love the opportunism.
Yeah.
She knew what she wanted and she found a way to get it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, it is because Alice kidnaps Bella, and it is revealed that she kidnaps her because Edward has said, in exchange for watching Bella while he goes to hunt, he bought her the yellow Porsche that they had stolen in Italy because she loved the car so much.
Yep. Which he already said he was gonna get it for her for Christmas. I'm like, she just couldn't wait those extra like 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. She did
Yes.
make comments earlier in the book about how she couldn't wait for to get her Porsche,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
ironic for an immortal being not to be able to wait till Christmas, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Seems like a small amount of time, but
Yeah.
Oh, man.
She needed her Porsche.
Yeah. I also had a question here about, well, like Bella then calls her out about being like, isn't this a little crazy, like you doing this? And she realizes that it isn't just this one time, it's going to be whenever Edward leaves, Alice is going to be like watching to make sure she doesn't go to La Push. And Bella kind of like calls her out saying, "Isn't this a little psychotic?" is the word she uses. And Alice says, "Not really, you don't seem to grasp how dangerous a young werewolf can be." And I just had a question. I'm like, has Alice ever even interacted with werewolves before up until now? Like, I don't think so. We don't
Yeah,
know, but seems
no. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing to like, again, that's been a consistent question is how often are werewolves and vampires running into each other? Seemingly not that often. But yeah, yeah.
I don't appreciate Alice's prejudice that that is the case.
Yeah. Mhm. I do think, once again, the irony is not lost that both groups just view the other as like so dangerous and bad and that they are safe for Bella to be around.
Mhm.
Like, it's
But
just not.
they both acknowledge when they're not in an argument about vampires versus werewolves that neither of them are safe because like Jacob was keeping his distance because he didn't want her to get hurt and then Edward was doing the same thing like
Yeah,
like
yeah, totally. No,
they're
it's
all
not.
just silly.
They are some silly gooses, all of them. Hmm.
And then my last note was that I appreciated that when or well, Bella, doesn't she call Jacob first? Yeah, she calls Jacob first to let him know that she won't be able to meet up with him because of this happening, and he's all kind of like, can you do anything you ever want?" kind of thing. So, but then she calls Edward, and I did appreciate that she just like told him he was in trouble, and I'm like, good, hold him accountable for something. We like this. Like,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this chapter is the first time we see her really pushing back against Edward. Both the conversation about Switzerland in her room, where she's like, it's non negotiable. You have to figure out how to deal with this. And then also, um, yeah, when she leaves him that voicemail. And just, she's kind of like stood up or pushed against Edward's ideas previously, but she's never been like hard line in the sand,
yeah,
get over yourself. I'm my own person.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, okay, my last note. is the chapter ends with a little moment of suspense that someone knocks on the bedroom door, and it ends up being Rosalie who wants to talk to Bella.
Yeah,
That's where chapter 6 ended this week.
it is. I'm also realizing I completely forgot to watch the movie this week, so I don't have anything to say about the movie, but whoops.
That's fine.
Yeah,
It
so
was it was fine. I feel like I never have anything to say about the movie, so
yeah,
unless I'm like, that was bad, that was weird.
yeah. I just like to compare like the storylines that they have because also I think that this book is the one that differentiates the most from the movie. I might be wrong, but when I was like figuring out the timing of which section of the movie to watch and which of the book, it was kind of difficult because I don't think this conversation with Rosalie happens in the movie, but I could be wrong. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Ugh, man, oh man. Yeah, I have no idea what they're about to talk about.
Yeah. I have an idea, but I'm not sure. So
Okay. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, here's my prediction for next week. We'll find out. I think it is going to be, I think realistically, it's going to be Rosalie trying to explain. Now I feel like I'm right. As I'm thinking about this, uh, like justify and explain why she voted against Bella becoming part of the family and
mm,
try to explain that, but also like persuade her
yeah.
to like staying human longer.
Yeah.
That's my guess. I think I'm right.
Yeah. You might be. I also am realizing the conversation I was thinking of happens later in the series, so I don't know what this conversation's going to be either. That might be it. It might be.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we might get. Have we gotten much of Rosalie's backstory? We haven't, have we? I think that might be what's coming, which has to do with that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. All right. That's end of Eclipse section 1. Uh this book will also be 4 sections that we'll read this in. And then after this one, we're going to be doing the short Second Life of Brie Tanner.
yeah.
So,
And that one will probably just be a week, maybe 2 weeks. We haven't officially decided on that yet, but
yeah.
yeah. So for next week, we're reading chapters 7 through 13 of Eclipse and watching about 40 minutes of the movie. So
Mm-hmm. I think this is the longest movie chunk we've watched so far.
I think it is. And I think it has to do with the movie and the book being differently. So like the end
Yeah.
of the book has more detail than the movie does, I think. I might be
Yeah.
wrong, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening. Once again, guys, appreciate you. Feel free to share, send us your thoughts and opinions as always. Um, yeah. Thanks everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.